Hello, Maverick fans. Welcome to another edition of the Mavpuckcast, a very special
It,
NCAA pre-tournament edition of the Mavpuckcast.
I think this is the first time we've done an NCAA tournament show, haven't we? I'm pretty
Yes.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
So, obviously, the fact that we're doing this tells you that UNO got in because it'd be a pretty short podcast if we just said, well, UNO didn't get in, so have a nice off season.
Well, that could have been our season capper. That could have been the season capper. Well, UNO's not in, but Jason and I are going to make picks because every year at the beginning of the season, we pick a national champion. Although we didn't do that this season, but the first two seasons we were very diligent about that. And the two teams Jason picked the first two seasons were teams that just went totally flat during the season. And I just picked Minnesota Duluth in both instances. just kept picking the national champion to repeat. So we didn't get that opportunity, but we might get the opportunity to pick our previous national champions in this bracket that just came out mere moments ago.
And if nothing else, my tidbit to all of you, my advice is whoever I pick to win the whole thing, pick them next year because it seems like they always seem to do better the year after I pick them to do something. So
Yes, whoever Jason picks will win the national championship in 2022. So
that's
there you go.
that's our predictions. so so let's run through all of the teams that are in. I think it's probably best if we run through matchups instead of through seeding. Do you agree, John?
Yes, I think we go through each geographic region and go matchup by matchup.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's start. I've got the bracket that I'm looking at. Top left has Fargo, so we'll start there.
Okay.
So Fargo obviously has the host school. North Dakota is your number one seed. They get American International, AIC. And with them, you have Minnesota Duluth playing Michigan in the second game.
Yeah, this is some interesting matchups. These were not the matchups that a lot of the prognosticators on Twitter came up with over the last 24 hours. Obviously, they had North Dakota in there because North Dakota is the number one overall seed. North Dakota is the host school for the Fargo Regional, so we knew that North Dakota would be in there, but there was some variances to these other matchups. Starting with North Dakota and American International, I'm going to pick North Dakota. American International was a team that a couple years ago was an upset special in the NCAA tournament, so that would be an interesting one to pick. That's definitely a bracket buster type of game for Division I men's hockey, but I'm going to go with North Dakota playing in Fargo in front of that partisan crowd, limited though it may be. I will say North Dakota wins that first game against American International.
I'm with you there. College hockey is always a weird one. It's not uncommon for four seeds to take out one seeds in some of these brackets and stuff, but I look at AIC's roster and I just don't know where. Like, they're going to have to play another game of their life because I thought they really played, one of their better games just to get into this tournament. I just don't know. They're going to have to play better than that to beat North Dakota, and I just don't know. I just don't know where it comes from. So I'm going to pick North Dakota as well.
Yeah, a lot of depth on that North Dakota team, and they're going to be a team on a mission because they didn't get to
Yeah.
play for the national championship last year. So
Your perennial pick to win the championships got a pretty tough matchup here with Michigan. Michigan's a much improved team. They played well in the Big Ten. They're a rough, hard-nosed kind of team. They've always been known for kind of that gritty game, but now they've got a top line that has some top-end speed. I picked Duluth to get out of there. This is one of those that was kind of a coin flip for me. Like we were talking before we started this, and I'm like, I went through in three of these regionals, like I didn't even hesitate. I'm like, I just don't see where it comes from. It's this team, this team, this team, right?
right.
This was not one. I had it down to two, and this was my second to last one that I was like, I don't know who to pick on this one. So I went ahead and picked Duluth. to get through this. I would not be surprised if I'm wrong on that, though. What do you think?
This is one of the most interesting matchups of the tournament, and I think again, not having had any interconference play during the season, it's hard to know how Duluth will match up against. Obviously, we've watched Duluth a number of times this season, but Michigan we've only watched once, and it was their Big Ten hockey tournament game this last week. So I I don't know. I mean, I hate to go against the NCHC. Obviously, it's the conference that we love. But I'm just gonna, just for the fun of it, just because I'm not necessarily looking forward to another NCHC matchup in the next game. I'm gonna say Michigan finds a way to upset Minnesota Duluth. And yes, Minnesota Duluth is my perennial national championship pick. So I don't know why I'm going against that, but this is one of the most interesting matchups, and I know that why that matchup took you as long as it did, Jason, because it's a tough one to pick. Certainly talent on both sides of the roster. Mel Pearson has the Wolverines going again. They look like they're kind of coming back to form. So I'm going to go with Michigan over Minnesota Duluth.
So our first difference of opinion there.
Yes.
This game has overtime written all over it to me. I just this could very well be. I could see it being a high scoring, like 5-5 and going overtime. I could totally see this being, 0-0 and
yeah, one of those games that's like 1-1 for the longest time.
It very well could be. I could see it going either way, but these teams seem to be capable of playing both games and both styles of play, and so whichever method of play prevails, I think they'll both be prepared for it. So
okay.
Should we save our bracket for the end?
Yeah, do we want to do we want to go back and then do the Frozen Four picks from those that we have picked throughout? Okay, let's do that. So we'll
go through all the regionals.
Yeah, which one are we going to next?
Let's head to North Dakota's the number 1 seed. Let's head to the number 2 seed, Boston College.
Okay, hold on a sec, Jason, because as I'm looking here, I'm like, I don't have the whole bracket here. Okay, there we go. That screenshot did not work. So, okay.
So Boston College with the last team in, Notre Dame.
Yeah, it's kind of a, Back to the Future matchup for a few years there after the dissolution of the CCHA and the WCHA as we knew it a few years ago for the formation of the NCHC and the Big Ten Hockey Conference. Notre Dame did not join the Big Ten Hockey Conference at that time or the NCHC, despite rumors that swirled during that whole formation process that would happen. They ended up in Hockey East for a short time, so they are playing a former Hockey East foe, another Catholic institution. This is a good kind of Catholic mafia matchup. Kind of one of those made-for-TV matchups, two named schools that have large national followings. BC, led by Jerry York, and Notre Dame, led by Jeff Jackson, who was lobbying to get into the tournament ahead of us last week after they were ousted from the Big Ten Conference tournament. So this is an interesting one. This is another good matchup, another tough matchups. Jason's just starting with the tough matchups here. Boston College or Notre Dame. What little action I've seen in Hockey East this season came this last week in the Hockey East tournament. So I'm going to go with, just because I think it's hard to play those Boston schools back east based on our experience playing in Worcester. I'm going to say that Boston College wins this game against Notre Dame, but this is one that could go either way as well. And I was kind of surprised, quite honestly, to see Notre Dame in there because a lot of the prognosticators didn't have them in the field of 16 this year.
And I think they only got in because of COVID.
Right.
I think that news today is because, even Coach Kemp, former Coach Kemp, for those that don't know, was leading the committee.
Yes, Jason, I love former Coach Kemp. He's an associate athletic director or assistant athletic director. I get the A.
That's too much to talk about.
He's a lot. He's the chair of the NCAA men's ice hockey committee this year. Saying continue, Jason. Yes, he was.
So he's leading the committee that was making the selection, because obviously because of COVID, things are different from years previous where you rely on mathematics to get you in. This was all, opinions and stuff. And he had mentioned in the selection show that they had narrowed it down to two spots left in the tournament, and there were three teams that they were debating about getting in, and they pressed him a little bit on it, and he had said the two teams that benefited from was it was St. Lawrence, right? That
Yeah, so
had the COVID.
St. Lawrence had the upset win to win the ECAC championship. And they were a conference that was really limited this year because the Ivy League schools chose not to play hockey this season at all. So Quinnipiac was the favored team in the ECAC tournament. St. Lawrence was the underdog, very few wins on the season. St. Lawrence came in, they got to the championship game. They found a way in overtime to win that game against Quinnipiac, and we actually watched that on ESPN Plus yesterday. It was a really good, really entertaining game. St. Lawrence played well. Players were excited. They rejoiced. They got the auto bid. It was a team that would not have had any chance in an at-large bid. And then it comes out this afternoon right before the NCAA tournament selection show on ESPNU that the coach of St. Lawrence tested positive for COVID, and they will not be able to play in the tournament. And I mean, what a heartbreaking, what a just a heartbreaking way in a season, I'm sure, of a lot of unpredictability for all these teams. What a heartbreaking way. So it, as you mentioned, it opened the door for a team like Notre Dame to get in.
Yeah, and I think so. I have to imagine that the third team that didn't get in was probably Denver. I mean, at least that's the one that was talked about a lot. But it sounds like that their exit moved Quinnipiac in. That opened up that extra spot, and it became Omaha and Notre Dame getting in. I didn't have as much of a challenge with this part of the bracket as you did. I look at Boston College and think this is now. Obviously, I picked them before,
Yes, in
to
the
win
in the
something.
in
So,
the
but
2018-19 season, Jason picked them to win the national championship. So he is very fond of BC.
yeah, and I think their offensive power. They've got some really good defensemen. Drew Hellison, Powell, uh, War. Marshall Warren, I think, is a kind of a little bit of a sleeper defenseman back there. He's a little small in stature, but I like his attitude. So, and then you've got plenty of talent up front for Boston College. Notre Dame's there's no team in here that's going to be an easy out, but I'm taking Boston College. I don't. I think they've got a better team than some people give them credit for. So
You have
now
no qualms about that. No qualms.
yeah,
about
that one really didn't. I really
Okay.
didn't. I hate to say I didn't give Notre Dame a chance, but I just really didn't think too highly of Notre Dame going into this,
Yeah, you were
and
not.
Boston College is kind of a powerhouse there. So
Yeah, you were not a fan of Notre Dame.
I
They've
got a
well,
lot
the
of
last few
potential, but
days
it's
that you
one of
and I've
those.
been talking.
Yeah, it's one of those teams that there's potential there, but I just don't know that the attitude's there to succeed. It's like you've got the blocks. It's just you can't put them together to make anything. So we'll see.
Yep.
They are an upsetter that I could totally see. Notre Dame. Proving me wrong and stuff here, but we're all guessing here, and I'm gonna guess Boston College. Now the second half of this bracket is the one I told you. Like I was down to I could not decide. St. Cloud State heads out to play Boston University, and oh boy, that should be. This game is circled, emphasized. Like, do not contact me on March 27th because I will definitely be watching this game. I expect this to be a really, really good game. But man, I could not. I struggled with this pick.
See, you had
I
you had a struggle with this one. I had a struggle with the last one. I don't have a struggle with this one. I'm going to pick St. Cloud. This is a redemption game
Yeah.
for them from their 2019 NCAA tournament appearance. They were the ones who were booted in the 2019 NCAA tournament by American International in Fargo. That was a tough game for them. God, they had a great season that year, an absolutely fantastic showing that season. They were 36-3 that season. Got one of the best performances I remember seeing. St. Cloud was loaded with talent, and then they laid an egg in the NCAA tournament. It was painful to see. I mean, it was cool for people who like upset specials, but it was painful to see. This time they get their chance at redemption. They have some of the players from that roster, not all of the players from that roster, but David Rennick's still there in net, and I think that this is a redemption game for them. I think they're going to come out with something to prove after that. I think that loss left a bad taste in their mouth, so I'm going to go with St. Cloud over BU.
Do you think that the loss to Notre Dame or to North Dakota in the NCHC affects St. Cloud at all?
No. No, I think they're like, you know what? We lost to North Dakota at North Dakota. Everybody but Omaha loses to North Dakota at North Dakota these days. So that's all I would say. No, I think they'll be okay. I think they'll be okay. That was obviously a very entertaining game in the NCHC championship in Grand Forks, but I'm going to go with St. Cloud. Obviously, they don't have the kind of depth that they had 2 seasons ago, but I got to go with our conference mate in this instance. So I'm going to go with St. Cloud.
Well, we differ again.
Okay.
So I did pick Boston.
Okay.
I think St. Cloud's good. I just don't know. Like I said, man, this was literally the last pick, and I had part of the rest of my bracket done. I was to the semis on one side, and I was like, I don't know about this one. I really, really don't know. This whole bracket could be a buster here. But I think Boston has more high-end talent. I think they have more to prove. I think everyone knows St. Cloud's a good team. I think that them losing to North Dakota, especially the way that they lost to North Dakota, and that as good of a game as that is, that a lot of people are going to kind of pick them, and they may have a little bit of a, feeling like they have an easy path through. I worry a little bit about them looking ahead too.
Well, they've got to be careful
College
about
and knowing
that.
what Boston College done. Yeah, you can't look ahead. Boston College, they're going to be lingering there, in their bracket, because you're going to know that St. Cloud Boston game. You're going to know what Boston College did with Notre Dame ahead of that. So you're either going to be looking at a Notre Dame team that you think you can beat, or a Boston College team that you know is going to be a tough out. And they're the type of team that I think that might get into their head a little bit. So I'm picking Boston. Part of it might little be because I still want to see a bean pot in my lifetime. It's a bucket list thing for me. So since I'm not going to be able to go and see one, I might as well watch one on TV. So I've got a BCBU semi there. So.
Well, speaking of BCBU, when UNO was in I believe it was either the East or Northeast Regional that we were in back in 2006, our first tournament appearance. UNO played BU in one game, and Boston College played Miami in the other game, and the two CCHA teams lost, and the next game for the Frozen Four was BCBU, and we got to see that game, and it was disappointing because our team hadn't advanced, but it was kind of fun to see the crowd and the atmosphere in Worcester, Massachusetts for a BCBU game. So if you do ever get a chance to see them play each other, it would be a lot of fun. But I'm going to go with, like I said, St. Cloud. And here's the thing about the Albany regional, Jason, is that Bridget can attest to this. The entire week I was convinced that UNO was going to end up in Albany, And I'm like, great, I'm going to have to try to figure out how to get to Albany. Do we fly? I mean, I'm sure you can get pretty good airfare. Do we drive, which would take forever? And then I look on the website of the arena that they're playing at in Albany, and you had to have a negative uh, COVID test within 72 hours of the game being played, and it's a Saturday game. And so I was really trying to figure out, like, am I going to have to get that before I go or after I get there? Because the arena itself was offering tests on Wednesday, the 24th, before these games, from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. But it didn't seem practical to leave to get there for a test on Wednesday and then have to wait until a game on Saturday. So yeah, I was really not wanting UNO to be in this regional. So I guess for St. Cloud fans, they get to deal with COVID tests and everything else. I mean, it's one of those things. Plus, the procedures to go in, you had to make an appointment as to the time you got to go into the arena, and then you had to present your test with your video ID. And the pessimist that I am, Jason, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I swear what's going to happen is I'm going to be standing outside the arena and some Barney Fife at this Albany arena is going to be like, sorry, sir, your test isn't valid. And I'm going to be sitting outside of the Albany Regional waiting to watch my Mavs. And I'm going to be denied 19 hours from Omaha. So thankfully that didn't happen. So good luck to St. Cloud and their fans. And if any of them are listening who are planning to travel, you now know about the COVID test you have to get. And it sounds like it's the swab test you need to get. So have fun with the brain probe, fans.
All right. So let's move over. Let's do Wisconsin. Wisconsin, Bemidji State. This is one of the ones I went through, picked pretty quickly. Cole Caulfield is a stud. He is playing amazing hockey. We can all thank our lucky stars that this is probably, especially those of you who are Big Ten fans that stumbled across this podcast somehow. You can just think the fact that it's very unlikely he returns with the way that he's playing and what Montreal's doing. I fully expect that he will be headed to Montreal for the next season. So he's got a little bit to try to go out on a high note here. I just don't know where Bemidji comes up with, beating Wisconsin right now.
Yeah, some people were questioning whether Bemidji would be in. Some people thought Bemidji would be in because they were a close drive to Fargo. Right. And so they would make a good fourth seed for North Dakota to play. That obviously didn't happen. Bemidji still got in. They end up playing Wisconsin in the first game. Now, full disclosure, Wisconsin was Jason's national championship pick. Was it last season? And we didn't get to see that. We didn't get to see that bear out. Yeah, last season, that was your pick. Boy, this is an interesting one. I feel like I've got to pick. I feel like I've got to pick an upset special somewhere. And I wonder if this isn't the upset I want to pick. Never mind. Yeah, I'm going to go with Wisconsin, although that Bemidji, under
well, you got Michigan
Tom's
over
territory.
Minnesota Duluth. That's an upset.
Yeah, but that's not like that's not gonna shock anybody. That's not like the 1-4,
okay, all
type
right.
of thing. Bemidji State's one of those teams that they are a tough little scrappy team under Tom Serratori. Obviously, when we were in the WCHA with them, we ran into problems with them. The neutral zone trap came back to haunt us during those years during the WCHA playoffs when we faced them. So they could present problems for Wisconsin. I'm going to go with Wisconsin in this game just because they're the higher seed in this instance, but that's the only reason why. That could be an upset special. So
yeah, I don't share that opinion. We'll see. But I clearly am not giving Bemidji State a whole lot of credit, so all four of their fans can harass me on Twitter.
Wow, okay.
It's a good thing no one listens to this, right?
Yeah.
All right. Let's do the second half of that one. We got Lake Superior State and UMass.
Yes, UMass.
Former former UMass player McCarr
Yeah,
tearing it
Kale,
up for the
Kale
Avalanche right now.
McCarr. Jason was a big fan. Colorado Avalanche
Draft pick,
draft
yeah.
pick at the time when we first, I believe we talked about them last season. And yeah,
Season
they
before, yeah, a little bit last
season
season, but the season
season
before
was
was
it
when
season
he was still
before when
playing at
that
UMass.
was when
Yeah.
they won the national champion, or they did they win the national championship in 2019?
No, they lost. They lost in the
Did they lose?
championship.
They lose to Duluth? Yeah, they
Yep.
lost to Duluth. I remember that because Bridget and I were at Disney World sitting in our hotel room at the Art of Animation Resort watching that game, and we were just like bone tired after like spending like 11 hours a day at each theme park we were at. So yeah, no, that was a very entertaining game as I recall correctly, and I may have fallen asleep through a period or two because I was exhausted. But anyway, it was a great, great game. Um, this is a really interesting one. Lake Superior State was a team that people weren't sure was going to be in. It's nice to see the team have a bit of a resurgence. This is a team that did really, really well in the late 80s and early 90s under Jeff Jackson was a coach there for a while, and Frank Anzalone was a coach there as well. And I love the fact that they're in the tournament. I don't know that they can win, but you know what? I'm going to pick them to win because I love the anchor on their jerseys. I'm going to go with an upset here. I'm just going to throw it out. Nobody cares what we pick anyway. So I'm going to say Lake Superior State finds a way against Massachusetts, which they really do seen that program turn around because they rebranded as UMass. They used to go by UMass Amherst because you had UMass Lowell in the same conference. I watched UMass. You know what? Gosh, should I pick that pick? I will, although I will tell you, I watched UMass and UMass Amherst yesterday in the Hockey East Championship, and I will tell you, the Minutemen were really able to shut down Lowell in that game. Lowell could not get anything through. They couldn't get any looks on net, but I'm going to say that Lake Superior State finds a way to do it because I think they're going to be overlooking Lake State in this game, and I'm just our former CCHA mate. I'm excited to see him in the tournament, so I'm going to say that that's an upset special.
I wouldn't be surprised if you're right. I actually picked UMass. I think that UMass plays, especially in that championship game, like you had mentioned here.
Yeah,
I think they play a better team game. Uh, I don't know. I saw them. I thought it was really interesting. Apparently, Lake State has the most international players of any of the teams that are
interesting.
um, in the tournament, which I thought was really kind of. I think that gives them a bit of an advantage. So while I picked UMass, I wouldn't be surprised if I'm wrong there, and you were correct.
Yeah, it's again without any interconference play this season, it's just so hard. It's just so hard to know,
And
and
we used to say that NCHC was the powerhouse conference because almost any team, particularly the top teams in the conference, would go and play. They'd play a Bemidji or Lake State or Quinnipiac, Providence, places like that, right? And
yep,
they'd almost always win. Like our record against other conferences as a conference was always, really, really high. So a lot of these things, like you've just got nothing to go off of. When you're trying to say, okay, well, the talent inside of Conference A is better than the talent inside of Conference B because all you've seen is Conference A or Conference B, and you don't see that carryover. So there's a lot of style of game stuff I think is really hard to predict this year.
well, and I'll tell you, looking at that international roster that you mentioned, that is a really intriguing roster. I mean, they've got like 3 or 4 guys from Sweden. They've got a guy from Tokyo, Japan. They've got a
Yeah.
player from Latvia, France. Obviously, guys from the Canadian provinces, but that's actually really, really. They got a guy from St. Petersburg, Florida. That's in hockey. That's practically a foreign country, isn't it? Right? But that's
Well,
that's
and
pretty
then
cool, and I
you
love
look
to
at
see that because you look at a place like Sault Ste. Marie, um, where Lake Superior State plays. It's up there in the Upper Peninsula. That is just a really unique. Went up there to see 3 series at Northern Michigan University. It's a really just a unique vibe, a unique dynamic in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and that's really really cool that they're going outside of traditional recruiting territory because they've lost recruiting battles to the other Michigan schools and the Wisconsin and Minnesota schools. So you go outside of the country, and if you can make it work, you can have a lot of success with some of those Euro players. That is really really cool to see. So I'm really glad now that I picked them to upset because I'm my fingers crossed. I'm going to be hoping it happens. So
So we'll move on to Loveland, Colorado, where Omaha in their first round matchup takes on Minnesota.
yes, and I was very excited. I was very excited that Omaha made the Loveland Regional. You and I had talked about it before because you obviously you grew up in Colorado and you went to school in Colorado, and I was so excited when this came out. I'm like, oh, this is great. We're going to be able to go see UNO play in this regional. We've never missed a regional in Loveland, Colorado. And I knew that they weren't allowing fans at sporting events because you're a big Colorado Avalanche fan and you were telling me about it. But you also told me earlier in the week that it had been announced that at the beginning of April, people will be able to go to Colorado Avalanche games and Colorado Eagles games, which is the minor league team in Colorado. And
Correct.
I thought just my natural inclination was, oh well, if they've got an NCAA tournament deal coming at the end of March, they'll let fans come. But as of now, and probably as of always here, it's not going to happen. So I didn't have to go through the testing process to go to the Albany Regional, but it looks like I'm not going to be going at all for the Loveland Regional. But I think it's good for UNO to be close to home. And they get the Minnesota Gophers, which I think this is a really exciting matchup. During our short tenure in the WCHA under Dean Blaze, UNO had success against Minnesota. And at the time, the Minnesota program was a bit down. Obviously, they are back. They are back. The resurgent team. They plucked their head coach from St. Cloud State. And they are back in hideous yellow breezers, ready to make a statement to the college hockey world that Golden Gopher hockey is back here to make a run in the NCAA tournament.
I will say, going into this, I think this year Minnesota's been a bit of an overperformer. I mean, I thought they were going to be a good team. I did not think that they would be challenging top of the Big Ten the way that they are. And I wonder about this team if it catches up to them at some point. Like if they start playing to where you expect them to be as opposed to where they are. And UNO's not an easy out. I think that matched up well with a bunch of guys that are, willing to lay it all on the line and say, hey, there is no tomorrow anyways, we might as well just make a heyday, right? I think UNO's primed for an upside on that one. Did you say who you were picking there?
No, I didn't say how I was picking there. Now, I will say that during our NCHC tenure, head coach Bob Motzko had our number when he was at St. Cloud State. The guy can recruit really, really talented players. The thing that I would say, though, is that I think UNO is a better team than people give them credit for. I know that there was a lot of debate this last week about whether Denver was actually the better team, even though they were sub 500, because people wanted to talk a lot about, whether a 3-on-3 tie was, a win. Obviously, it counts as 55% of a win, but without the pairwise, it's really hard to kind of calculate that kind of stuff. I thought we were a better team than Denver. Denver to me was lackluster, and I think we're a better team in this conference than we're given credit for. I really, really do. And I think to me it goes back to the way that UNO played in the pod. I think they played very, very well back in December, and then the second half of the season. Look, I know that people kind of poo-poo Colorado College, but we got the season sweep on them. We won all 6 games. And I think that was That was an important little statement. We had success against Denver this year after not having had success against them for the past several seasons, and we broke through against North Dakota. We beat them at Baxter Arena, and then we also took a game against them at Ralph Engelstad Arena up in Grand Forks. So I'm going to say UNO is another upset special in this game. I'm going to say that we beat Minnesota. I think, again, we're going to find out a lot. We're going to find out how good the Big Ten is. Every couple of years, people are like, "Is this the resurgent year for the Big Ten?" Well, without any interconference play, we don't know. If there'd been interconference play, maybe the Big Ten wouldn't look as good as they've looked this season. So, and certainly, by the same token, the NCHC might not have either. But I think UNO is a tougher team. They've had some time to rest now. I think their depth will help them this time out, and I think that they're a good upset. But I don't think Minnesota's going to take them lightly.
No, it's going to be a hard fought game. I actually picked the same upset. That was my lone one seed upset is Omaha taking out Minnesota. So we agree there. So now it'll be interesting because I have a feeling I know who you're picking in the next one. We'll see if I'm right. Between Minnesota State and Quinnipiac.
Boy, I'll tell you.
Quinnipiac, obviously, as we talked about earlier, getting in because St. Lawrence had the issues with COVID and their coach getting positive tests. So now in walks Quinnipiac, having lost that game and something to prove, I think. So I don't know. I took Quinnipiac because I think that they're lucky to be in, and they're going to want to prove that they belong, that it wasn't just a fluke, and that they got in, and that they're not an easy team to just walk over. And Minnesota, man, I just can't pick Minnesota State in a tournament. Like, I don't know what it is with that team, but the best of seasons, and then they just lay an egg come tournament time. So this was one of those really quick ones that I circled just simply because I don't know that I can pick Minnesota State ever in a tournament.
Season after season, they will have a great regular season, and then they prove themselves to be a paper tiger in the NCAA tournament. And that, is probably why you picked Quinnipiac in this game. You were probably having, flashback to the, 2015 Midwest Regional when Rochester Institute of Technology came out of nowhere. People tend to forget Minnesota State Mankato in that 2015 NCAA tournament. They were the number one overall seed. They weren't just a number one seed. They were the number one overall seed, and they lost to RIT. So we had to go through Harvard and RIT to get to the NCAA tournament. A lot of people were like, well, that was just too easy of a draw to get to the NCAA tournament with. Although my thing is you can't control who you play. You can just control how you play against them. So
right.
I'm tempted to pick Quinnipiac here. There was some question when St. Lawrence got that upset win in the ECAC tournament whether Quinnipiac would get an at-large. A lot of people thought they would, but some weren't quite sure. So this is a real opportunity for them against Mankato. I don't know. Do I want to pick the upset too? You know what? I think I'm going to pick Minnesota State Mankato just because if UNO does get past Minnesota, I want to see them take on Mankato. That's a matchup going back to the early years of the program. I loved seeing the two Maverick teams play, the Red Mavericks and the Purple Mavericks. And I would love to see Mike Gabinet and the boys take on Mike Hastings and his crew, because I know that there were a lot of UNO fans because of Mike Hastings' long tenure with the Omaha Lancers, that there were a number of fans who wanted Hastings to get the job at Omaha when Dean Blaze left. That ultimately didn't happen. So I think this is a great opportunity. You've got the young up and coming coach that we have, and then you've got kind of the veteran coach in Hastings. So I'd love to see that matchup. That's the only reason that I'm going with it. But like you said, I do think Quinnipiac has a chance to win there. So
you picked Michigan over Duluth, didn't you?
Yeah, I picked Michigan over Duluth.
Darn. I was gonna say, you had it primed had you not made that pick that UNO could have won the championship by only beating teams from the state of Minnesota.
Oh, they could have gone. They could have gone through. Yeah, we should just
Do
gone
you
through.
realize that? Like, yeah, because if they play, they beat Minnesota, then they beat Minnesota State, then you have them beating St. Cloud in the quarters, and then you have them in the semis beating Duluth. You could have had them literally winning a national championship, not playing anyone outside of the state of the Minnesota.
Oh, that would have been awesome. Yeah, they could have St. Cloud in the championship game. Yeah, there you go.
So okay, so
Okay.
you've got. Shall we just stick here then, and we'll go through?
Yep.
We'll pick our get to our Frozen Four here.
Okay.
So you've got Omaha and Minnesota State. I've got Omaha and Quinnipiac. Who do you have as the team from Loveland going to the Frozen Four?
Well, I'm going with Omaha, and in your bracket, if it's Omaha versus Quinnipiac, I'm going with Omaha. But yeah, I'm going with Omaha.
I'm going with Omaha as well because I picked Quinnipiac and I think they can beat Quinnipiac. And if Minnesota State manages to get out of it, who knows there. I mean, I just where did that come from? So I'll pick them over Minnesota State as well. I think UNO matches up. I actually think UNO matches up better with Minnesota State than they do with Quinnipiac. So um, I kind of hope that you're right and not me, just because I think that the way that we play, is apt to cause Minnesota State more problems than Quinnipiac. So,
Yep, I agree.
all right, so we both have UNO getting to
The
their
Frozen
second
Four.
Frozen Four.
Yeah.
Oh boy, I hope we can like get vaccines and be able to go see that. That would be pretty cool. Okay, so I've got the Bean Pot. We'll go down there.
Yes,
I got
you
Boston College, Boston. You've got Notre Dame and St. Cloud, right?
do. No, I've got Boston College and St. Cloud.
Oh, okay. Boston College and St. Cloud. So I will, between Boston College and St. Cloud, I will take Boston College. Between Boston College and Boston U, I will take Boston College.
Okay.
So, shocker, I'm taking BC.
I would take another NCHC team. I like St. Cloud, but I think in this instance, I'm going to go with Boston College.
So, our second team going to the Frozen Fours, Boston College.
Yep.
All right. I've got Wisconsin and UMass.
Yep. And I've got Wisconsin and Lake State.
And who you want?
I mean, I want Lake Superior State to go to the Frozen Four because I think it would be great to have that. It kind of remind me of those years when there was that one year. I think it was the Detroit year when I think you had Bemidji and RIT. I can't remember, but you had two like number 4 seeds make it there. But I'm going to go with Wisconsin making the Frozen Four.
I agree. Caulfield's a stud. I just don't. I think they've got a little bit more to prove because of how the Big Ten championship stuff went. So I think Wisconsin's got a bit of a chip on their shoulder. So I will take Wisconsin as well. And they will play. I've got North Dakota Duluth. You've got North Dakota Michigan.
Yeah, that North Dakota Michigan for me is a really intriguing matchup, but I think North Dakota being in Fargo, again in front of a partisan audience, however whatever percentage they have, 25% or who knows, the North Dakota Health Department might allow them to have 100%. Who know? I don't know. I don't know. But all I'm saying is I think North Dakota wins and comes out of the Fargo Regional against Michigan.
I have North Dakota coming out of there as well. I really wanted to pick Duluth to beat them just because I just get this aura of entitlement that comes out of North Dakota, and I kind of want someone to knock them down, but I still go, man, they're a really good team. So
well, and I'm a fan of Duluth. I picked them to win the national championship the first 2 seasons of this podcast. If we had a national championship at the beginning of this season, I would have picked them again. So yeah, Scott Sandelin and company, I think potentially can have a lot of success in that regional if they get past Michigan. I don't think they will. I think Michigan will get that game.
So we're back on to the same page. We both have North Dakota, Wisconsin. We both have UNO and Boston College.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah.
All right. Semifinals.
Wow, it's
Am I
weird
going
picking.
first? I should go first. It's only fair. I've got Boston College beating UNO.
Okay.
I've got North Dakota beating Wisconsin in a really close match, and that was another one that I was tearful over. Like
Okay.
I think Wisconsin's a really really good team. The defense on North Dakota. I have to assume that the defense on North Dakota is going to be capable of handling Caulfield, and as long as they are, North Dakota should win. So I'll take North Dakota, and so I've got North Dakota and Boston College in the championship.
The championship game. Yeah,
What do you
well,
got?
I'm definitely
What you got?
picking.
What you got? What you got?
I think North Dakota's superior depth will prove too much for Wisconsin. I just think that there's a lot of talent. There's an awful lot of talent on that team. You look at guys like Jordan Kawaguchi, Grant Mismash. Um, you look at their goaltending on that team. I just think they're really strong. So I'm picking North Dakota to get to the national championship game. And am I having them play Omaha?
An all NCHC championship.
What the hell? Yes, because that's what could have happened in Boston 6 years ago. If North Dakota had won their game against BU and UNO had won their game against Providence, we would have seen North Dakota playing Omaha for the national championship. So let's make that happen now. I don't know how well we would do against BC, but let's be optimistic. I've been optimistic all season. I constantly am picking UNO to win. It hasn't happened every time, obviously, but yeah, let's say that this team gets on a run. If this team gets on the run and they run the tables in this tournament and they get to the Frozen Four, who the heck knows what's going to happen? Who knows? I mean, heck, BC. We could do something really funny on this podcast and say BC between the regional and the Frozen Four gets COVID in that off week and they can't play, and UNO gets to move on via forfeit to the championship game. It's just let's just do something crazy like that, Jason.
Turns out that North Dakota has COVID again, and suddenly they can't play.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's
So you have UNO North Dakota. You have UNO winning then, or do you have North Dakota
in the
beating
championship game.
UNO?
Did you say who you were going to have?
I did not. I did not say my championship yet. I got North Dakota and Boston College.
Well, heck, if we get to the championship game, we're winning the whole thing. I'm telling you, I'm telling you right now. I'm telling you right now, Jason.
You heard it here first. John thinks UNO comes as the 15th team in the conference in the country, all the way number one.
Yes.
No, I've got Boston College. So I guess that we've got the winner of our game. Apparently, we both think is going to be the national champion. Neither of us picked North Dakota, huh?
Neither of us picked North Dakota.
I think BC's got something to prove, just like Wisconsin, and I think North Dakota. Again, the way that they performed in the NCHC conference championship is one of those things that shows me, like, if they get a little overconfident, it could bite them. And this is a classic chant. Like, this is a team that's good enough to beat North Dakota if North Dakota's not on their game. Like, if North Dakota plays their game 100%, no one beats them. I just think they're gonna be a little bit lax going into this, and then Boston College is gonna snap them. So if UNO does manage to get through BC, then I agree. North Dakota's primed to, especially against that. It's a foe that they've seen before, that they know they can beat and just get surprised. So that wouldn't surprise me. But I've got Boston College. You've got UNO.
Yeah.
I think the odds are neither of us are right. But...
Well, it's who knows what's gonna happen. After the whole St. Lawrence thing today, it's hard to say. So
Yeah.
yeah, I've got Omaha and North Dakota playing in Pittsburgh for the national championship. So there you go. You're welcome, Matt
And
fans, and possibly North
no
Dakota fans.
no matter what happens with UNO's game against Minnesota, on the 27th, we will be back with a podcast just to let you know how everything went down. And I know, John, you probably plan to watch a lot of the games. I will have it all set up. I will probably watch every single one of them. I love college hockey, especially in the tournament. So looking forward to this a lot.
Yep.
For fans out there that want to watch the games, you have recommendations on how they can see UNO or any of these other teams play?
Yeah, they're on the ESPN family of channels. So you may need to get a subscription to one of the kind of the streaming service bundle packages that includes ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU, ESPN News. A couple of the games will be on ESPN3. I don't have those memorized off the top of my head, but every year there's certain games. In the past, during the NCAA tournament, there have been years where they've had, in addition to them being on the linear networks like ESPN2 and ESPNU, they have had games on ESPN3 alongside those. I don't know that that'll happen this time, but you might want to check online if you're a cord cutter and you don't have those stations. It'll be interesting to see what they do the next week. Right now, I don't see that, but I really wish that, I'm paying monthly for an ESPN Plus subscription. I really wish that it would include things like the NCAA tournament. It doesn't yet. Someday I'm hopeful it will, but yeah, but give that a shot. I always look forward to watching the games every season as well. So it's a lot of fun. It's one of the best postseason tournaments in college athletics, and I think just best postseason tournaments in general. One of my favorite times of year is NCAA men's hockey tournament time.
So since you have ESPN Plus, you're saying, just clarification, that if fans don't have a cable subscription of some kind that gives them access to the ESPN suite of channels, the ESPN Plus subscription service does not include
No,
anything that's aired on ESPN or ESPN2 or any of that.
no.
Okay.
It tends to be programming that's unique. So a lot of times there are certain, like the other the Summit League sports, we'll get to see a number of like the basketball games and baseball games and things of that nature on there. So some of like the smaller conferences you get to see, but no NCAA hockey that I know of. Who knows? I'll check this week, and obviously be sure to follow Mavpuck on Twitter and Facebook. And if I do see something different, or if I see that the games are on ESPN3, which you can generally watch with an internet subscription, through a cable provider, as opposed to a TV subscription, you can generally watch them. But this year they may not do that. It just depends. Different times they do different things. They used to have more content on ESPN3 that they do, so they may not. So you may have to subscribe to some bundle like Hulu Live TV or YouTube TV or something like that if you're a cord cutter and you don't have all these channels. But it's worth subscribing for a month to get to watch the NCAA tournament and the regionals, and then the Frozen Four. I think it's a lot of fun, so I look forward to it every year.
Should be some good hockey for sure.
Yep. Until next time, be sure to follow Mavpuck on Facebook and Twitter, as I mentioned, and Bridget's going to be glad that we got out of here, below 2 hours here, because she's always constantly worried about that, because she sees people talking about stuff on the Mavpuck Facebook and on Twitter that you and I have talked about on this podcast, and people are presenting it like it's brand new information. And,
John, I have to ask before we sign off here, though.
yes.
In the past, Mavpuck has done some bracket challenges. There's usually some obscure site or something to let us
Do those bracket challenges.
Do we anticipate that that'll happen again?
Yeah, I think we'll do one. I think Bridget will set up a bracket challenge for this 2021 NCAA tournament. And I want to apologize
Awesome.
if I referred to it as the 2020 NCAA tournament. It takes me at least 6 or 7 months to figure out what year we're in every year. I'm probably still stuck on 2020 since we completely lost that year. But yeah, we'll try to do a bracket challenge probably in our Facebook group that people can join and make their picks. It's always fun to do that.
Yeah, it's a good time. See what other fans think will happen and who ends up getting it right.
Yeah, see if they pick North Dakota and Omaha to play in the national championship game too.
Or Boston College to win the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe the winner of our bracket challenge can be a guest on the podcast. Maybe we'll have to fire up Zoom and get them on here to talk about their. Unless they pick all number one seeds or something like that, then that's not very. That didn't take much creativity, so I don't know if that's worthwhile. But if it's one of those weird things where you've got like four, like 2 4 seeds in the tournament, and yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll see what's going on. But at long last, until next time, go Mavs.
Go Mavs.